What's up guys, and welcome to another video. So, if you have been subscribed to my channel for a while, you might have seen my very first Guild Wars 2 video, which was also first impressions. But today I have decided to remake that video, as I feel like I really didn't make the game justice in that video. As some of you commented on that video, it was very uninspiring and honestly pretty poorly made, so I hope I'll improve that in this video. Even though I've played Guild Wars 2 now for over 25 or so hours in total on all characters, I still consider myself new to the game. Therefore, I would still consider this as my first impressions, as the game has a ton of things to do and explore and just learn. Now, this video will contain my personal opinion and what I've learned and discovered during my time in Guild Wars 2. So if you're thinking about playing this game, then I might be able to help you make up your mind. And with that said, let's begin. First of all, let's begin actually with the character creation. First thing you do is pick a race. There are 5 different races. The difference between the races are pretty much only the lore behind them, the looks, where you start, and also each race has their own personal story. None of the races are gender locked, so any race can be either male or female. Great, by the way. There are 9 different classes. All of them are unique with their own abilities and movesets. I will talk more about that later when we get to the combat. Really like about the game is that you can pick almost any of the classes right away. Well, basically the only class that requires you to buy the game is the Revenant. That's actually pretty rare to see. Normally in free-to-play MMOs, more classes tend to require you to pay for them or require you to have other classes reach a certain level. So great job there. Now let's continue with what I think is the biggest pro of the game, the combat. Guild Wars 2 has very fun and interesting combat system. It's kind of a mix between tab targeting and action combat, which works very well. Also, all of the classes are unique and they play very different compared to each other. They have completely different abilities even when using the same weapon. So for example, an elementalist using daggers have completely different moves compared to, let's say, a thief using daggers. Which leads me to another pro. Every class have multiple different weapon types that they can use. For example, my main is an elementalist, so I can use staves, daggers, scepters, focus, war horns, and each of those have their own unique abilities. So the abilities I have using a staff are completely different compared to those I have when using daggers. That's just amazing. And most other classes, except elementalists and engineers, at level 10 get to unlock a skill that allows you to swap between weapons, even while in combat. What all this essentially means is that there's such a big variation in combat that you can switch between different weapons whenever you want to, just to mix things up. Is really cool and refreshing. Oh, and the level scaling is great in this game. Basically, if you're a higher level than the zone you're currently in, you will get downscaled to match the monster's levels. This makes it really simple for high level players to play with the lower level players, without walking around and one-hitting everything. This also prevents low-leveled content from being obsolete for higher-level players. And even when you're downscaled, you will still get experience and loot like you would in higher-level areas. Well, it's slightly less efficient though, but it's still worth being in lower-level areas if your friend is. Something else I really like in this game, the dynamic events and world bosses. These are some of the most fun and entertaining things you can do in the game, at least as a low-leveled player. So let's start with dynamic events. These are basically, events that can occur in most areas. You get one or more objects that you have to complete to win the event. And depending on how much you've participated, that will determine how much experience you get. Now these events can be completed on your own, but what makes them so much fun are when several players go to one event and work together to complete it. It's just really nice to get some player interaction and you don't feel lonely in the world anymore. There are also group events, which most of the time you will not have a chance to solo. What normally happens is that even more players gather to, for example, kill a giant bear, which is just really epic. Now there are also world bosses, which I mentioned recently. These are like the dynamic events, but these spawn at a fixed location and time, which means that there are normally a bunch of players at one time trying to complete it. This makes, of course, for some really epic and rewarding fights. All types of events provide great experience and are definitely worth doing. And they are a lot of fun to do. I just really love fighting a giant bear or a fire elemental or whatever. And the higher level you get, the more of them you have a chance to complete. But unfortunately this game is not perfect. There are actually quite a few cons that I definitely have to address. This game is sadly, like most MMOs, not very optimized. Okay, so I really like the graphics and art style in this game, but they aren't as advanced and, well, good looking, you could say, as other games, so the game shouldn't have to run as poorly as it does. This is especially noticeable during world bosses and when in big cities. The FPS can drop to around 30 FPS and sometimes even freeze temporarily, or even lower FPS. And it seems to be like this on most PCs, even fairly high-end ones like mine. I have an i7 4770K, which is still a pretty good processor. Also, this game doesn't really teach you that much, so if you don't have a friend to help you out when starting, it can be quite overwhelming, to say the least. Luckily, I've personally had the fortune to have all my viewers help me whenever I get stuck or have questions. But the community, at least with my experience, is possibly the best one I have ever encountered in any MMO. So if you don't have a friend to ask, you could probably ask and get a proper answer on the forums. Now, my last con, I would assume, is kind of controversial. There are no ordinary quests in this game. What you have instead is the personal story, which you can only do every 10 levels. And you also have the renowned hearts. The renowned hearts are basically mini tasks that you can complete. They don't give too much experience and it feels very grindy to run from heart to heart and complete them, which I know you are not supposed to do, by the way. What this makes is just a very unique leveling experience. Very different to any other MMO, and to be honest, I'm not sure if I'm too fond of it. Yes, it is unique, and I normally find it really unfair to judge games for what they don't have, quests in this example. But there is a reason most games have quests, and that's because they work. It takes you on a journey and you will learn the game. Combining the lack of quests and lack of directions in the game, you will probably feel kind of lost in the beginning, and you will most likely end up running from heart to heart just like me, which is not only inefficient but also very grindy and somewhat heartbreaking. As a quick summary, Guild Wars 2 is a fantastic game with a ton of things to do and explore. The pros. The combat in this game is really fun. Each class has so many different abilities and mechanics that even the same class can feel very different just by switching weapons. Dynamic events and world bosses are great. They are a ton of fun that just helps bring players together. The game has a very fair free-to-play model. The game is not unfair for free players and it's not pay to win. However, the game is still worth buying if you are interested in the game. And there is an in-game shop, but that is mostly cosmetics. And from what I can understand is that you can actually buy currency using real-life money, but it will cost you a ton of money to actually get anywhere, so therefore it's not really pay to win. And the personal story is mostly really fun. The voice acting and story is very good, it's great in my opinion. Now for the cons. Guild Wars 2 is poorly optimized. During intense battles and when in cities, the FPS will drop really low sometimes. And I don't personally like that there are no traditional quests. As I said, combine this with a lack of direction and the game is quite confusing for new players. The personal story can only be played every 10 levels, leading you to get distracted and not as immersed in the story as you could have if you were to play it and play it continuously. And as a free player, you can't actually sell items using the in-game trading post. I don't quite understand this. I think it would have made more sense to restrict free players instead of completely locking them out of selling stuff. Well, you can still buy some of the stuff. By restricting, I mean letting free players only listing 1 or 2 items at a time, for example. The bottom line is that Guild Wars 2 is a great MMO, possibly one of the best you can currently play right now. And there are so many things to do. I haven't even tried dungeons, fractals, world versus world, etc. or PvP. Even though I listed multiple cons, I still feel like the pros heavily outweigh most of the cons. If you haven't played Guild Wars and you're looking for a new game to play, then definitely give this game a try. And it's free. Anyway, that's it. If you enjoyed this video, then please leave a comment, like and subscribe to the channel, and I hope to see you in the next video.